Happy Sunday afternoon, Lenten Sunday afternoon, number one, parish orphans and retrogrades. Dialogue between Icone and Rome, that is to say, the Society of St. Pius X and the Holy See, particularly through Cardinal Tucho Fernandez, our favorite here, clown kisser Tucho Fernandez, was briefly opened and then closed over the past 2 weeks. In today's show, I want to explain to you high IQ Catholics out there who don't want to be fooled on either side what happened. And as usual, the analysis I'm giving in this case requires almost no nuance. I mean, sometimes nuance is needed. The folds in between the fabric are needed for examination. But this is one where if you take the proper view, if you take the proper scope before you select your view, it's a really simple question. And it doesn't require any kind of commitment to some moderate center or anything like that. You'll see how, when I get into the analysis, the dialogue between Icone and Rome, a lot of cognitive dissonance on the part, well, really on both parts. But once we acknowledge, as I've acknowledged every time I ever debated a Protestant or Eastern Orthodox, even as a papal minimalist, I acknowledge, well, Rome has final say, has this Pastor Eternus 1870 granted universal power of authority. Even as a papal minimalist, I acknowledge this. Then one side is allowed, if you will, to express itself with cognitive dissonance. That's the side on top. That's the authority. That's Rome. Icone, the Society of St. Pius X, nor you or I or any of the fraternal societies or any of the castries or any of the creatures of Christ's one church are not allowed. We don't have the plenary authority to express ourselves, particularly in acts of unsubmission, with the cognitive dissonance. And by that, I just mean your premises contradict one another. All right, so let's get into it. I want to do that today in a way that makes sense to everybody. I'm going to be real specific. This dialogue proceeded. I'm going to move backwards in the timeline for once. I like
while you're moving backwards. So will you just explain just real briefly for people who are new Catholics or I don't know, just converted, like who are the SSPX?
Oh, okay. We're going that far back.
Let's go that far back.
So the Society of St. Pius X is a fraternal order started by some French good guys, I would say. And people know in this audience, I've always made fun of, the Archbishop who started SSPX, and I've always kind of poked fun at his name. But I do think he's a good guy overall, and more close to my worldview inside and outside of the church than anyone in power in the church. I should say that, right? So SSPX, what else did you want? So in
more specifically, what's the controversy?
Okay. So all of the documents from Vatican II, all of the constitutions, declaratios, declarations, were signed by the Archbishop in charge of SSPX. How would I always say his name? How would I always Lefebvre. No, I'll drop the Lefebvre. That was funny.
Makes him so mad.
That was funny for 5 years. I'll stop. So Lefebvre signed all the documents, right? The 1962 to 1965 documents. There are 16 of them. Archbishop Lefebvre, who started the Society of St. Pius X, signed all the documents. Then, when the documents turned out to be textually sound, as he originally thought, but intentionally ambiguous in eventual usage, which is called the spirit of Vatican II, he started reversing course. I think in 1970, founded SSPX. I haven't checked my history on this because I wasn't preparing specifically for it. And it was fine. It was in full communion with the church from 1970 until 1988. In 1988, Archbishop Lefebvre ordained 4 bishops without the pontifical mandate, without the permission, if you will, of John Paul II. I think it was summer of 1988. And they were all excommunicated. And at that point, in 1988, that summer of 1988, then you had the split off from SSPX of other Ecclesia Dei institutions who wanted to stay in full communion with the church, who wanted to still be Catholic, like the Fraternal Society of St. Peter, FSSP. You have other groups like ICKSP who basically wanted to stand for the Sunday by Sunday allowance to, say, the TLM, the Vetus Ordo, if you will, not have to say the Novus Ordo, but to agree to the other changes brought by Vatican II, whether or not by the documents themselves, 1962 to 1965, or by, the spirit of the magisterial interpretation, the spirit of interpretive gloss put on those documents after 1965. FSSP, who I support where I can, and I have friends who are priests in the Fraternal Society of St. Peter. Basically, they're just SSPX, but in full communion with the church, which means, well, you can't be SSPX. Right. Well, that's true. Once an essential property of the SSPX led initially by Archbishop Lefebvre, and then by Archbishop Fillet, and now by Father Davide Pagliarani, the superiors general. I might have missed one in there. They sort of refused to come into full communion with Rome, and this is the historical morphology as it's developed at the end of Francis's pontificate and the beginning of Leo's. That's what today's show is going to be on. And what happened is, just a couple days ago, on February the 18th, Father Pagliarani, the superior general of SSPX, responded to an invitation from 6 or 7 days earlier, 6 days earlier on February the 12th, a theological dialogue that Tucho Fernandez, clown worthy, he's an evil guy, but he is in charge of the Holy Office. He's the doctrinal number 2 in the church under the Pope, had invited him to. And I'm going to talk about what madness it is to shut down the dialogue before it even happens. And in the letter, Pagliarani on February the 18th expresses, well, I'm not going to do dialogue for a number of, I think, insane reasons. One of them was, well, the only time we've been wanting to have this theological dialogue for 7 years, now you're granting it. When I want something for 7 years, by the way, and someone grants it after 7 years, I'm like, let's do this thing. But they finally got it granted. And now he's like, well, I'm not going to, because the only reason you're doing it now is because we began threatening in early February, I think February the 2nd, to repeat episcopal ordinations without the pontifical mandate. And all right, so that's the whole thing. Basically, February has brought this whole news cycle, and we're gonna trace it backwards in time from February 18th to 3 days before that, 6 days before that, to February the 12th, when there was this Holy See proposal, to 3 days before that, where there was a private meeting between the Pope and Tucho Fernandez. That was on February 9th. To 4 or 5 days before that, I think 5 days before that, on February the 4th, where the director of the Holy See Press Office, Matteo Bruni, another clown, another lavender clown. I don't like any of these guys representing Rome, by the way. I've done shows on Tucho, I've done shows on Matteo Bruni. But they expressed the Holy See's desire, which is probably pretextual, for effective means of dialogue for positive results. 2 days before that, on February the 2nd, SSPX had announced in a communique that in the middle of the summer, July the 1st, it's going to repeat this 1988 train wreck of, without papal mandate, ordaining new bishops, an act of schism, The excommunications have all been lifted as a sort of gift by Pope Benedict. And now they're just going to do it again. What they did in 1988 that caused the whole schism. So they're talking about dipping deeply back, nosing deeply back into the schism, worse than what it was before. And everyone's confused. That's what today's show is going to be. I'm going to give you both the 30,000 foot view, because this is a really simple issue. Whether you like Rome or you like Icone, this is a very simple issue for Roman Catholics. It's actually very simple, but I am going to go through the details and sort it all out for you today. I'm not one of these guys. I was talking to my friend Joe Enders. Still go support him on his GoFundMe or whatever the alternative account is. Can we put that in the show notes, Steph? He got fired from his job.
Sure.
He comes from church militant. You know, Joe's become a close friend. Those guys really, I don't think they hate SSPX, but they're really passionately against SSPX. I'm not there. I don't care. I'm not against SSPX. I'm more of a trad than Joe and a lot of my younger friends are. I'm more of a trad. But on the other hand, you know, look, I come from TNT. You first knew me on Taylor Marshall's channel as the co-host of his channel. And that was one of the things that was dividing Taylor and I toward the end of our nearly year and a half run together. Was he was getting, in my view, illogically amicable with the society. And the Society of St. Pius X is simply, whether you like it or not, I'm not angry at them like some of my younger friends. I'm not friendly toward them. I'm just like, look, cognitive dissonance is always the mark of schism. And their premises do contradict one another, and they can't get philosophically coherent, the SSPX or their backers or their friends, even if I like their end goal. I like their telos. I am not a fan of the new mass, the Novus Ordo. I am a Vetus Ordo supremacist. I really firmly believe that through the will of God, in 100 years, the Novus Ordo won't exist. I'm not saying how, but I know it will eventually go away. My firm belief. I don't think the Novus Ordo is just as good if you do it reverently. I think that's nonsense. But I also I never defend idiotic, autistic self-contradiction. And that's what you get on the SSPX side. So I think I'm one of the few guys, along with a couple of my other friends that are right where I'm at on this, that are truly objective, because I do think Lefebvre is, in his heart, a good guy. His goals were good. I don't know why he signed all the Vatican II documents, because that's the other thing they'll say. SSPX is, well, it's not just the spirit of Vatican II is evil, the documents are evil. Okay, well, your guy, your boy, signed all 16 of the documents. That's retarded.
Because for
if
newbies,
the documents are evil, and it's not just the interpretation of them, willfully bad interpretation of them, then why did he sign them? Then he's part of the problem, not the solution.
we have some newbies in chat. So the controversy there is that the SSPX has a problem with the modernization of Vatican II. And in Vatican II, they claim that there are certain documents that, you know, opened up the gates, so to speak, of this modernized mass and all of the liturgical abuses that we see.
Does
and
God will multiple religions?
That sort of thing.
Freedom of religion, that's their biggest issue.
Right. And so your point there, just to catch up people who are new to the situation, is that the head of the SSPX actually signed all those documents at Vatican II.
Yeah.
So he endorsed them.
In it's really three Vatican II documents that deals with the religious liberty, near heresy. The language is bad. It's very confusing. But when you plug the language into like a propositional argument maker, or if you symbolic logicked the language, we can actually reduce in symbolic logic language to a given proposition of symbols. It's actually fine. And you heard me debate this twice with Jay Dyer over the summer. Even that stupid Protestant on Tim Pool with me and Jay was trying to take pot shots. But Tim was like, wait, I'm looking at the language. Tim Pool, who doesn't have a horse in the race. And he's like, no, I agree with Tim Gordon. This doesn't say that Buddhists are a real religion, or that they actually can claim what they hope to claim in terms of veracity, truth claims based on Buddhism. Same with Islam, same with Hinduism. This just says they believe they can fly. They believe cows are God or whatever they believe. So while the documents are written badly and were indeed taken advantage of, I don't just mean after the fact, probably before, during, and after the fact, the language is clear. That's the whole nuance.
And this is where,
Vatican II. And this is why it really, really confuses autists, nitwits, and midwits alike. Those three groups, autists, like the SSPX, nitwits, like, extremists on either end who hate the SSPX or really love and are devotees of the SSPX. I'd say both sides are nitwits. And then midwits who have a moderate position for or against. I think my position is the only one you can really have if you understand the way that propositions work. And I'm gonna explain that fully today. What were you gonna say, Steph?
I was just gonna say that I think what you're saying, and it makes sense to me, is that the language itself inside the documents is fine, but the bad actors in the church knew that they could reconstruct it, so to speak, with the language that was present to make some of these sweeping modernization type moves. Like they could kind of broaden out their elbows, so to speak, and take what was there, which what you're saying is what's there is fine, but they knew that they could build upon that in a way that could subvert the original documents.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. The language is so touch and go.
Mm-hmm.
It was crafted explicitly to be so touch and go that it doesn't take much subversion at all. It is right on the borderline of heresy, just north of heresy. And I've done really in-depth shows on this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've been on Matt Fradd explaining the really fine details of the language. I gotta know my enemies here. The bad guys who wrote this, the Jesuits, the Ronerites who wrote the language of the documents at Vatican II, is really ingeniously crafted to create this division. And when the enemy, the bad guys, the leftists, the modernists, are so much smarter than your average midwit or nitwit,
mm-hmm.
faithful Novus Ordo types and trying to be faithful SSPX types, it really throws midwits and nitwits for a loop. And that's why you get a lot of passionate anti-SSPX rhetoric from new converts that are like, the church could do whatever it wants. Not totally. Mostly. Disciplinarily, yes. So the mass, we don't have much of a leg to stand on. But not doctrinally. But doctrinally, it's saved by this word or that word. And then you get the nitwittial response from SSPX going the other way, saying, this is we can make emergency consecrations. This is canonically valid. This is an emergency. Why? Because we say so? No, come on. You should know better. So everyone's really confused, aside from higher IQs, and that's literally why you need cooler heads who are genuinely objective, who genuinely want the best, and genuinely, I think, believe that ultimately Lefebvre was a bit dishonest. I don't think he ever owned. I never saw him own up to, look, I pulled a boner, right? I shouldn't have signed all the documents. I should have caucused the way any constitutional ratification convention involves the opportunity to caucus for or against the ratification of said constitution. At Vatican II, it was 16 constitutions. But I am literally an expert in the U.S. constitutional ratification, particularly the state house ratification conventions in the summer of 1788. So I really know how to assess this. And what Archbishop Lefebvre needed to do, we're kind of in the weeds here, but what he really needed to do was caucus at Vatican II and say, maybe this language is fine. I'm inclined to sign all 16 documents, but I'm going to caucus against them. We need to clarify that the orthodoxy over the heterodoxy here. And he didn't do that, and he signed them. So it's really, really, really the first mark of the SSPX, his society, that all of his people say that the flaws are in the documents themselves, even though our leaders signed them all. It's crazy.
Just a quick house note. We're going to do a members only stream after this. So if you're on a monthly member on YouTube, subscribe, Star or Locals, there'll be a time after this live stream where you guys can come in and ask Tim your questions. Also, if you're just here for the live stream, go ahead and post challenges to Tim's positions or questions you might have on Super Chat, and we'll read all those at the end of the show.
Super Chats, yeah. You want to challenge something? Throw $5. $3 our way. You want to dance, you got to pay the band. That's like Rocky says. Come on, because I know.
You want me to say it like that next time? If you want to dance, you have to play the band.
Pay the band. Yeah. Okay. Real fast, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to this channel. I know long form content's sort of been on the out lately, and I don't do super long form. I like aiming for around an hour. But subscribe to this channel. We're trying to hit 75,000 subscribers. If you want to support us in a more profound way, Locals is where you could do it. I've been kicked off of the Trump 2020 Steering Commission by Jared Kushner himself, allegedly, for being anti-Israel. I've been kicked out of relatives' wills for my position on divorce and remarriage. I've lost my job famously in 2020.
Kicked out of funerals?
Been kicked out of funerals. I mean, I got kicked off of Patreon for my position on the Catholic pelvic teachings against homos and divorcees and all kinds of porneia-addled minds. So Locals is where you can support this channel. Rules for retrogrades.locals. Please do so. $10-20 a month is really helpful, and you get cool stuff, sneak peeks, free stuff, special interactions, previews, all that. And also, now that we're coming into beautiful spring again here in the South, where I urge you to sell your house if you live in a blue state, get to a red state today, go to realestateforlife.org, www.realestateforlife.org. Get out of your blue state, get to a red state today. It's the only way to really trust your neighbors. You can't do it if you live in California or New York or Oregon or wherever else, Massachusetts. You got to get someplace where you actually mainly think like your neighbors. realestateforlife.org. Okay. So mark these red letter dates. I don't, maybe it's good that we went through the long 50-year history in opening. I don't mind doing that a bit, but I wanted to be detailed as to what's happened with the SSPX and the Holy See, Holy Office, just in the month of February 2026 with this relatively new Pope, less than a year ago ordained new Pope. February the 18th, we get the response from SSPX to the invitation to theological dialogue, which they had been clamoring for 7 years. We want a theological dialogue. We want a theological dialogue. We want a dialogue about the theology of Vatican II with the Pope and the prefect from the Holy Office, Tuccio. In this case, it's Tuccio. Before it was, we've had a lot of prefects for the Holy Office over the last 10 years. I guess 4. Tuccio. Before that, we had that interim one after Mueller, and before Mueller, it was, of course, who was it before Mueller? Under Benedict. I'm forgetting. Might have been Ratzinger himself. I can't remember if there's one between Ratzinger and Cardinal Mueller. But then we had the brief kind of moderate in between Mueller and Tuccio Fernandez. And now we have this goofball modernist heretic gaywad Tuccio Fernandez. So look, I'm not like, you can't accuse me of being overly submissive. What?
Is he the heal me with your mouth guy?
Heal me with your mouth. He wrote a book on French kissing.
Gross.
Tuccio Fernandez. A book for teenagers on French kissing called Hear Me With Your Mouth. You can't write this shit.
What a weirdo.
I do not like anything non-perennial about the post-conciliar church. I don't like the new mass. I don't like the leaders. I don't like most of the bishops. I don't like most of the priests. Okay, that's me. Together with Taylor Marshall and maybe a small handful of others, I am in the top 5 best-known American Catholic lay critics of Pope Francis. And by extension, I haven't spent as much time on Leo yet. Let him get his feet wet. He's kind of boring, but he is Francis too. Furthermore, I'm a bigger critic than probably any of these trads that criticize Francis or Leo of Pope Benedict XVI, who at one point I loved. I think Pope Benedict was an absolute knife in the back. And I'm one of the biggest critics of Pope John Paul II as well. And in that regard, let me open up the detailed analysis of what happened February 18th, February 12th, February 9th, February 4th, February 2nd, with an examination of a tweet by my former colleague, my former counterpart, Taylor Marshall.
Do you want me to put that on the screen?
Yeah, if you'd put that on the screen, I'll read it.
Let me see if I can find it.
I want to talk about what Taylor tweeted this out yesterday. And I think it's real trouble. And I am not Mr. Submit to Rome in a LARPy way, right? You don't have to do much. You can talk about what homos a lot of these guys are, because they are. You can talk about how inferior on an objective aesthetic basis the Novus Ordo is to the Vetus Ordo. You could talk about how bad the patent, 60 years later, patent intent of Vatican II was by both John the 23rd and Paul the VI. How bad the Ratzinger-Ronner intervention was to change Vatican II from what it originally was, an extension of Vatican I to close the second half of Vatican I, which was never closed. Vatican I was about Pastor Aeternus, the 1870 document laying out the power of the Pope and the power of the bishops and how it's collegial, even though he's more than the first among equals. That's the question. You get into that question, and it's a serious question when you talk to Eastern Orthodox guys. What's the power of the Pope? How is he collegial with regard to the other bishops? How is he more than just an honorary head? That's important. That got interrupted about halfway through at Vatican I. And Vatican II, when they came back to it, to Vatican I, which was never concluded until like a year before Vatican II, because the Franco-Prussian War broke out, was supposed to be about that and was supposed to clarify, the fifth Marian dogma. They're supposed to do those two things. And instead, Cardinal Ratzinger, who even a bunch of trads think became a conservative as Pope Benedict XVI, which is hot nonsense. Ratzinger, together with Karl Rahner, the intellectual leader of the Jesuits who wrote Vatican II, he wrote it up with Cardinal Ratzinger. So I'm with the trads on all the attitudinally, dispositionally. But when it comes to, okay, so therefore, let's just pretend that we're not Roman Catholics and start nominating our own bishops. Why not nominate your own head of a bishop, Pope?
I have that tweet up from Marshall.
Okay, yeah, you want to read that?
Oh, you want me to? Sure.
Yeah, this is him regarding the SSPX debate. And the absolutely apposite in this sense means perfect analogy between the proposed episcopal ordinations of July 1st of this upcoming summer. No permission from the Pope, who has always been required for episcopal ordinations. To make new bishops, you got to have the Pope's stamp of approval for 2,000 years. That's coming up in 2026. They're going to do it again, just like they did in 1988, and they all got excommunicated. SSPX was fine in terms of its canonical status, full communion with Rome from 1970 until 1988. Then they broke off. They all got excommunicated in 1988. This is Taylor, my former counterpart and colleague, Taylor Marshall of TNT fame, coping hard as to why these proposed episcopal ordinations of this summer, 2026, are nothing like that of 1988, 40 years before, 38 years before.
This is a tweet that he did yesterday. And again, you tried to interact with this, but he still has you blocked. So we have to do this, I guess, this way. He says, regarding the SSPX debate, people are saying it's 1988 all over again.
Which it is. It is.
He says, it's not. Let me explain. In 1988, the papacy was esteemed and honored. Pope John Paul II was loved universally. We now live in 2026 after decades of sexual scandal exposés involving priests, bishops, and cardinals. There is now no JP2 generation. Stop me when you want me to stop. But
yeah, I'll let you get it.
Continuing on, he says, Pope Francis further eroded the papacy's admiration and respect. The papacy is still the papacy, but its current moral authority and ethos are not what they were in 1988. Moreover, the SSPX is much larger, and the devotion to the traditional Latin Mass is universally stronger now than it was in 1988. Pope Leo kept the inept and embarrassing Fernandez on, and the Cardinal is fumbling this. It's a breaking point, and I fear Pope Leo and Cardinal Fernandez do not comprehend what they are about to do. It's not 1988. Pope Leo is no Pope John Paul II. Fernandez is no Ratzinger.
This is, honestly, I'm trying to be charitable here. This is one of the stupidest tweets I've ever read on Twitter. One of the most intellectually impoverished tweets I've ever read on Twitter. And I'm trying to be charitable to my brother in Christ, Taylor Marshall. I cannot, for the life of me, understand whence this tweet. Taylor. Okay. The Pope's popularity, or the Latin Mass's popularity, incipient popularity, has nothing to do with Pastor Eternus, the 1870 Vatican I document, which clarifies obedience to the Pope. So there is nothing in the Roman Catholic teaching, true teaching, not the way the Orthodox caricature it or stupid Protestant bucktooth morons caricature it, but the real teaching out of 1870's Pastor Eternus that says word one about popular popes must be obeyed. Unpopular popes need not be obeyed. Or popular rites, there are all these rites of the Mass, right? They're like 22 if you total all the Eastern ones up. The Roman one's still like 97% of them. But it's the one that is bi-ritualistic because it's the only rite of the 21 or 22 rites that has two forms, a Novus Ordo and a Vitus Ordo, a new form and an old form. And that's stupid. We shouldn't have just two forms. We should have one. And it should be the Vitus Ordo. It should be the TLM. And that my trust is that will eventually happen. Don't know how. God's work, not mine. But there's nothing in Catholic teaching, whether we're talking procedural due process or substantive due process, to borrow a law analogy, there's nothing in the way that the working, the operations of the hierarchy require that would allow the popularity of a given rite to control whether or not you can attend alternatives to that rite. So, I mean, Taylor literally, so this is in the first place. He's asserting with this intellectually ridiculous tweet that because John Paul II was more popular than Francis or Leo, that Francis or Leo may be disobeyed, whereas John Paul II, he has a popularity score of 80 and you have to obey him. That's quite literally, I'm not mischaracterizing what he's writing here. It's directly implied, it's directly required by the logic the illogic he's teasing out here. It's ridiculous. If you don't believe me, you think I'm mischaracterizing? It's a breaking point, and I fear Pope Leo and Cardinal Fernandez do not comprehend what they are about to do. It's not 1988. Pope Leo is no Pope John Paul II. Fernandez is no Ratzinger. So he is saying popularity is the measure for obedience as a Roman Catholic. This is stupid. This
Has
is the
that ever
stupidest
been
thing
the
I've-
standard?
It's never been the standard. There are popular popes who are good. There are popular popes who are bad. There are unpopular popes who are good. There are unpopular popes who are bad. So 4 categories.
That's what makes obedience like a gift that we give to God,
Right.
Because we owe that in times
to
where
all
it's
4
hard.
types of popes. Okay, this is really important. Obedience is owed to popular good in the eyes of heaven pope, popular bad popes in the eyes of heaven, unpopular good, and unpopular bad. We owe obedience to all 4 types: A, B, C, and D. Popular good, popular bad, unpopular good, unpopular bad. Some popes, like Francis, are popular bad at first and then become unpopular bad. I mean, you could conceive of all these permutations of how the popes might be judged by history. Who cares? You have to obey them according to Pastor Eternus. I'm a papal minimalist. I don't think that I get myself into trouble when I make fun of the chief of the Holy Office as some gay clown. I don't think I'm in trouble when I say I really disfavor the Novus Ordo. I really think it's bad, even its best iteration. It's really tacky. It's nowhere near as good as the Vetus Ordo. I'm not in any trouble there. All of this is allowed by Pastor Eternus and the minimalism of Vatican I strongly. And you've heard me. I have shows on this. I've debated on this. It is the winning position. But okay, so Taylor is, and I don't want to overly do this tweet, but let me just conclude Taylor Marshall's tweet by saying not only is it ridiculous to close with the proposition required by this tweet is that it's not 1988, Pope Leo is not John Paul II, Fernandez is no Ratzinger, therefore they may be disobeyed. That's anything anyone... Okay, so that's not right. Popularity and obedience do not correspond to one another logically. But even if they did, let me show a way that I think Taylor is being disingenuous. Pope Leo is no John Paul II. Taylor and I did entire shows about how John Paul II is mischaracterized through the annals of history as a conservative. He was a bad pope. He was the pre-Francis. Taylor and I agree on that. We have 2 or 3 shows where that's the main theme. So to say Pope Leo is no John Paul II, this proves that he's not judging John Paul II on his actual merits, but just on the popular characterization or mischaracterization of him. Because Taylor agrees with me. I know for a fact, Taylor agrees with me. We have shows on his channel about JP2 is actually a liberal. JP2 kissed the Quran. JP2 called himself the feminist pope. JP2 started Francis's work moving against the death penalty. JP2, what are some of the other ones? Called himself feminist pope. JP2, he just did so much bad. JP2 was the first part of Francis. And there's like 3 or 4 more primary positions that make him very similar as a prefigurement to Francis. Also, he says Fernandez is no Ratzinger. Taylor and I also agree that Ratzinger / Benedict XVI is not nearly the conservative he's made out to be. So not only is he wrong by asserting papal popularity dictates whether or not you have to obey that pope. He's strongly implying it here, if not directly saying it in that closing. But also he's being dishonest about John Paul II and Benedict XVI. He agrees with me that we have not had a really good, really faithful pope since the council. That's my view. And a lot of trads share in that view. A lot of trads think JP2 is just the first Francis. They agree with me there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that was the surprising part of that.
He's wrong and he's being dishonest. I really...
And to talk about the size...
I really don't like that tweet.
Also, the size of the SSPX, he said, moreover, the SSPX is much larger and the devotion to the traditional Latin Mass is universally stronger now. That's irrelevant, too. I don't see how that gives license to
it doesn't.
Consecrate bishops.
It doesn't. And I will say this, okay? He and I did a lot of really good work together. The devotion in English-speaking countries, if you ask anybody that started going to the Latin Mass over the last 7 or 8 years, it's largely because of that show, TNT. Thanks be to God. It's largely because the diocesan or FSSP or ICKSP attendance has bloomed in America, England, English-speaking Christendom, largely because of Tim and Taylor and Tim.
Can you guys start consecrating bishops?
Yeah, we can't, right?
No.
Like in emergency conditions, can we?
There's a challenge to your position on Taylor Marshall in chat. It says, I don't think that's what Taylor was trying to say. I think he's trying to say that if people knew what was happening during John Paul II, they would understand why the SSPX did what they did.
No, you're wrong. That's just wrong. He's specifically, he's not seeking to rehabilitate 1988 and 2026. We'll call the proposed consecrations 2026 because they're going to do them. They've now said they're going to do them. He's not seeking to rehabilitate together. He started out his tweet by saying, no, I'm not going to try to rehabilitate 1988. I just want to differentiate 1988 from 2026. So they're not opposite. Taylor himself is saying that. So you're wrong. The opening line is, regarding the SSPX debate, people are saying it's 1988 all over again. End quote. It's not. Let me explain. You see why you're wrong? This is like those reading comp questions on the SAT, LSAT, GRE. They're like, what's the main thrust of the argument? There are objective ways to adjudge arguments, and you're just wrong. Taylor is not saying 1988 was good, 2026 is good. I'm saying they're both bad. Taylor's conceding, because Taylor's a classic line, borderline fence sitter. This is what he does. And there's a lot of things we argued about. Come on, dude, don't ride the fence. Take a position here. And he's trying to do it because I guess it's profitable or something. But I'm like, he's sort of conceding to the mainstream church. Okay, 1988 was bad. He's never said that full-throatedly. He didn't want to alienate the SSPX adjacents in his audience. And we would always argue about this. But that's what he's doing. He's making concession, and the concession is explicit. It's not 1988 all over again. Let me explain. He's saying 1988 is bad. 2026 is more morally licit, a lot closer to good.
Because of popularity and the size of the SSPX, and we now know
right
about
of
the
all
sexual
the rationale.
standards.
Right, all the blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But okay, do you understand why you're wrong? I get these challenges, and it's like, look, you're not going to catch me out. This is not hard stuff.
I think people get really like one of the things that you did that was really helpful a while ago is that when we talk about obedience to the Pope, a lot of people get a little bit twisted off by that, because then we see liturgical abuse, and that's scary, and we're like, oh, well, how far can the Pope go? What you're saying here is that there are certain powers the Pope has when it comes to the liturgy. This is one of them. It's unfortunately true that this is one of them, and we're in a time right now of suffering, and we're not called to take upon ourselves in this time of suffering and redemption for the church, like, oh, this is uncomfortable, we have to just start making ourselves like feathering our nest. Sometimes you just have to suffer, particularly when there are times when the Pope has license to do things that we don't like.
Sure.
He can't make us, do like what was the classic example? Because I think Trent Horn criticized you. He was like, oh, Tim's all about submission, but not submission to the Pope. But you're like, but the Pope can't tell me what to do prudentially every day like a husband can to his wife. He has certain powers that are outlined to him. And one of those powers, unfortunately, is the liturgy.
Of course. Well, of course it is. Yeah, and you're not going to catch me out here. The logic, like the same way you'd say E. Michael Jones has been really consistent for 10 years, 30 years. Nick Fuentes has been really consistent, even with regard to, he doesn't have a war with Venezuela. He can produce tweets. And I'm like, people are like, oh, isn't this bad? I don't like the war with Venezuela, but he's retweeting tweets he did 6 years ago saying war with Venezuela would be fine with me, even though he's generally anti-war. You're not going to catch these guys out. I'm another just turbo consistent guy, because when you're talking about Catholics who have the right worldview generally, and then a subset of Catholics, those ones that are not trying to be popular, are willing to say things that are unpopular even with their crowd, like an EMJ, a Nick Fuentes, or yours truly, it just sucks, because you get dummies in the comments saying stupid stuff that they think it's smarter than it is. They don't know they should be embarrassed for their lack of logic. That's annoying. That's the pestilence. But the benefit, the desideratum of doing that is, look, you're not going to catch me out because I'm turbo consistent. And so I've been making these arguments for 7 years publicly. I have no ill will towards Lefebvre. They're fun because they're autists and their defenders are autists. They're fun to poke fun. I purposely said his name wrong for 6 years. You know, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'll call him Lefebvre. I think he's a good guy, but he was dishonest about the fact that he screwed the pooch. He signed all those documents at Vatican II, shouldn't have done it. And therefore, everyone who loves him and defends him and reveres him ought to say, well, of course, the problem isn't in the documents because Lefebvre himself signed them. He becomes an author. A ratifier becomes an author. Of course, the problem, even though it's sort of interwoven before and during the signing of the documents because the intent was bad, it still is a way of enactment that furnishes the problem. Okay, let's get to February 18th because I want to show that everything, whether it's Taylor Marshall or any of the SSPX adjacents who kind of argue in favor of SSPX, do or say, or any of the SSPX champions themselves, the Hardys, do or say in defense of the society, are marked by one key tell, one manifestation of schism: cognitive dissonance, internal, inherent self-contradiction of premises. And it jumps off the page. Okay. So on February the 18th, you got the response by Father Davide Pagliarani. Again, probably a good guy, probably has a similar view of the world to me, probably a much more similar view of the world inside and outside of the church than Tucho Fernandez, the French kissing gay, who's somehow in charge of the Holy Office. It's perverse. Or Leo or Francis or any of the gays in charge of the Vatican, okay? So I'm saying that I probably would get along in some ways a lot better with Father Pagliarani. But so he responds to the Vatican's proposal 6 days earlier by saying this. Here are the main points of this response letter that came out, was published 3 days ago. He said, I proposed a doctrinal discussion 7 years back. This is SSPX leader. I wanted a doctrinal discussion 7 years ago in a letter dated January the 7th, 2019. And now you guys want a dialogue with me. 7 years I've been waiting for this. This is great. So you think he's going one way? Watch the cognitive dissonance. He can't finish a sentence without contradiction. He says, I can only welcome the opening of a doctrinal discussion with Rome. He sounds like, okay, I've been waiting for this for 7 years. You guys, Rome, you're welcoming Icone to a discussion on the doctrinal differences that we've had since the council. Let's do this. And he goes on. Second major point of his letter, his February 18th letter. At the time, the dicastery, let's just call it the Holy Office, said no, they had no interest in doctrinal discussion because agreement was impossible. So it was Rome shutting down Icone for a theological discussion of the Vatican II documents.
And specifically, that was Francis, right? I mean, so 7 years is like, to be fair to Leo, I mean, that was most of Francis's pontificate, that he's waiting to have this dialogue. Leo has gotten to this relatively quickly, considering the fact he hasn't been pope that long. To be fair.
Yeah, well, yeah, but the timeline's more complex because Francis was being weirdly palliative to them. But so let's just stick to this. So the dicastery says, at the time, 7 years ago, no interest in doctrinal agreement because it would be futile or something like that. And this is according to the characterization of Father Pagliarani himself. But for SSPX's part, a doctrinal dialogue, this is Pagliarani, has always been and remains desirable and useful. So Pagliarani, you're going to hear just insane Gollum levels of cognitive dissonance, right? The first two paragraphs of his letter back on whatever that was, February the 18th, was that Thursday? He's like, look, I can only welcome dialogue. It's going to be fruitful. It's going to be useful. I've been wanting this for 7 years. It's always, it has been for these 7 years when Rome refused Icone religious dialogue. It was then desirable and useful if we would have done it, but it remains desirable and useful, meaning this is good, let's do it. And he says, SSPX has always deemed doctrinal discussion desirable and useful. He repeats that. So you're like, okay, get ready for the insanity when you read this letter. And I invite all of you out there, SSPX lovers, SSPX haters, those in between, to go read this short letter from February the 18th. It's insane. It's Gollum arguing with himself, wringing his own hands. It's nuts. Then all of a sudden, he says, that said, well, I certainly rejoice. You think he's about to enter into the dialogue or say, yes, let's do it. He goes, that said, well, I certainly rejoice at a new opening of dialogue in the positive response to my proposal of 2019. I cannot accept the perspectives and objectives in the name of which the dicastery offers to resume dialogue. Nor can I accept the postponement of we're gonna consecrate these bishops. We're gonna ordain these bishops on July the 1st. I can't accept that. And he gives 5 reasons. We'll talk about those, but I want to do those fast. I just want you to see this isn't that interesting. It's an intellectual turd. When we try to, you talk to some of these SSPX spurgs, and again, they have a generally similar view of the world to me, inside and outside of the church. I repeat that. I have no cognitive dissonance. The difference is they're fucking autists. They're autists. They're incapable of going, yeah, okay, a lot of the bishops are gay dudes. Yeah, the council seems to have had the intent. Starting in 1958, they started changing around what Vatican I Part B would be into this whole new thing. Had this bad intent, and the documents were really weaponized ambiguity, and they kind of knew what they were going to do all along. And it's been a pretty gay, all the human elements of the church since Vatican II have been pretty gay ever since. And the new mass is tacky. They can't do that. They have to be like, but still, Rome is Rome. The personnel is policy, so it feels really fruity, which it does. But instead of just saying, well, yeah, but I'm going to go to TLMs where I can. Some people can go every week, a diocesan TLM or a FSSP or an ICK where I can. Or even you're allowed to go to SSPX as a layperson.
As long as you don't have a spirit of schism.
As long as you don't have a spirit of schism, you're allowed. The Holy See, John Paul II was weirdly nice to them, charitable. You're allowed to go as a layperson to their thing. We're talking about the clergy themselves of SSPX. They're the ones with their canonical status irregular or questionable or removed. You're even allowed to go to SSPX masses and give to, Rome said specifically, you could give to their donation boxes. But all you can't do is say, well, Vatican II is doctrinally wrong. You can't say that. And of course you can't. Of course you can't say that. You could say everything I just said had an evil intent. The authors behind Vatican II knew what they were going to do all along and confused a lot of people. They gave us a really lame new mass instead of the beautiful mass that makes men into martyrs and saints. They gave us a lame new mass, but the Eucharist is still there, so it's not only valid, but it's also legitimate. They just can't operate that way because they're autists. And that's what everyone who isn't SSPX or directly SSPX adjacent knows. And therefore, like Gollum, arguing with himself, and everyone is just like, you need us for any of this, dude? You know, he's like sitting there, like stroking his face in the corner. Like, yes, we've been wanting this theological dialogue for 7 years. It's always useful and good. It even remains useful and good. Let's do this. No, we can't do it.
No precious.
No precious. It's insane. And that's, my friends, that's the mark. I don't even mean theologically. I mean, that's the tell of a schismatic spirit. Even if I like a lot of these people, I like most of them, but they're autists. It's a form of retardation. They're spurgs. They don't get it. They don't get how to be in a room and just be a person like an autist. So they don't know that they're contradicting themselves, I guess sincerely. It's really plain. Okay, and then they say, okay, even though we expressed enthusiasm to do this theological dialogue. In paragraph 3 of our SSPX letter, authored by David Pagliarani, now we flip-flopped, and now we're going to give 5 very fallible reasons why we feel that we can't enter into religious dialogue, even though it's always good to do. It's always good to get into
waiting for it for 7 years.
We've been waiting for 7 years, and we're so happy. Let's do this. No, we can't. Here are the 5 reasons. 1, this is insane, and he just 2 paragraphs above complained about the fact that Rome made the futility argument 7 years before. Well, it's futile, so let's not do this. He says it. Direct quote, we both know in advance that we cannot agree doctrinally. 1, get your head checked, Gollum, Smeagol, because you just complained Rome made the futility shutdown. Rome peremptorily shut down dialogue 7 years ago, and you said it was really wrong because of the futility argument. But number 2, I mean, not his number 2, but a second critique I would level of his reason number 1. We know Pastor Eternus, 1870, is a thing. Rome has the supremacy clause over Constantinople. I mean, it's not a Petrarchy anymore, but over the other seas, over Constantinople, over Antioch, over Jerusalem, over Alexandria, over all the archdioceses in the world. They have the equivalent of a U.S. constitutional supremacy clause. That's part of being Catholic. Everyone screams that in the comments when I debate Jay Dyer, right? Well, look, there's a supremacy clause here. You know, the Pope ain't just the first among equals, dude. So they're screaming that in the comments, these Catholics that are even SSPX adjacent, when I debate an Orthodox. But then some of these people that are SSPX adjacent, all these people who call themselves SSPX adjacent, say things like, yeah, this makes sense. We both know in advance that we cannot agree doctrinally. Dude, if you're finding yourself in the odds of Aquinas's Summa, if you're finding yourself in the objections that end up getting replied to, you're going to be wrong.
You're cooked.
They're cooked. If you find yourself disagreeing doctrinally with eternal Rome, you're cooked. And it's an eternal contradiction. It's like self-contradiction number 3 in this very short letter. Okay, reason number 2 that they can't enter into theological dialogue, even though the first 2 paragraphs say, yes, let's do this. Insane. Reason 2 is the dialogue is supposed to clarify the interpretation of V2. But, Pagliarani reasons, this interpretation is already clearly given in the post-conciliar period and the successive documents by the Holy See. So now he's justifying the rationale of the Holy See for not entering into dialogue with him 7 years prior, which he just critiqued. So it's a flip, then a flop, then a flip, then a flop again. It is actually insane. Get your head checked, Father. I'm sorry, but you sound like Gollum. It's insane. I'm sure I like you much more than the Holy Office guys, or probably even Pope Leo himself. I probably agree a lot more with you than I do with him about generic questions about concerning my view of the world. But I owe a kind of Pastor Eternus allegiance to him, not you. And this is insane. You just said that dialogue is supposed to clarify the interpretation of Vatican II. We've been begging for it for 7 years. But then you assumed the opposite position, the rationale of the party you were just critiquing, the opposition party, as to why you really shouldn't enter into dialogue, because it would be futile. Insane. Reason number 3, we can't ignore the context of the Holy See's 7-year-long eventual grant of dialogue. That is, only after episcopal consecrations are mentioned by the SSPX did they become interested in talking to us.
That seems very feminine. It's like, now you're interested in it's like a woman giving a guy silent treatment for a while.
It is feminine.
And then he asks, so what's going on? And she's like, oh, do you want to know now? Really? Well, I'm not going to tell you.
Now that I threatened not to have sex with you, now you care about my feelings. You should have before. It's feminine. Disobedience. to a righteous authority is effeminate. He says this makes the Holy See's the Holy See's willingness to enter into theological dialogue seem dilatory and conditional. Well, yeah, dude. When you are petitioning an authority, the authority that Pastor Eternus says has the supreme authority on earth, and again, I'm a papal minimalist, to enter into dialogue with you, and they're like, well, we will under certain conditions. And then you're like, gotcha. You're only doing this conditionally. They're like, well, yeah, idiot. We just said conditionally we will. So of course it's conditional.
We have a challenge in chat.
Retarded.
Tim, he's saying that their mind's already made up, so there's no discussion. Vatican II is their new religion, and that's final. Come on. But this is what we're saying.
Wait. Hold on. Let me respond. I get it. You don't like Vatican II. But what do you say, guy, about the fact that he opened the letter criticizing Vatican II's exact self-same rationale for not doing dialogue 7 years ago? That's what I'm saying.
And it's not understanding roles. Like when you're the supplicant approaching your superior or your authority, it's already established. Anytime I approach you, like say you wanted to move to Rome, true story. And I was like, I don't think we should. I'm presuming your mind is already made up. I'm presenting my best argument in a system wherein I'm pretty sure that you've already concluded in your mind what the right course of action is. And it's up to me to put on my best case. It's lame to say, oh, I'm sure I'm not even going to petition because I'm sure your mind is already made up. No, that's the rhetoric of failure. Like you get in there and you present your best case. And if you have to do that several times, if the Pope is willing to hear that, then you have to do it several times.
That's the rhetoric. That's a great point. That's the rhetoric specifically of unsubmission, of feminist wives. And I used to find it paradoxical that there are so many feminist wives at the SSPX, and trads have really feminist wives. And I was like, that's weird. Are they just exercising their rebellion bug in coextensive ways, or what is that? You feel like you'd have the best, most submissive wives in the world at the SSPX, but that's not how they are. And it's because the men tend to, even though we have the same generic view of the world, we would take the same generic hardcore positions on cultural issues or whatever, or even ecclesial issues. The men generically don't understand, I'm going to mock this, but I have to do it because of Pastor Eternus, because of the supreme authority of the Pope on earth. I'm going to do it as I mock it. That's not the mark of cognitive dissonance.
Your submission to Rome is inspirational to me as my inspiration or my submission to you.
Right.
Like you don't have to submit to me. You do have to submit to Christ and the church. And so when I see my husband, yes, he's got critiques against the way the church has been run. It's very fair. We agree with the SSPX on that. But ultimately, when I see your submission to Rome and to the Pope on matters of the liturgy, that shows me like, okay, I know this is hard for you. I know that you prefer the TLM. I know this hurts your heart. I know all of this, but you're doing it because it's difficult. Same thing for me. Wifely obedience is difficult. When I hear women talk about like, oh, well, what if I don't like this, that, and the other thing that he does? It's like, exactly.
Right.
That's what makes it a sacrifice. That's what makes you holy as a wife, when you submit, when you don't want to, when you're feeling the rebelliousness, or you think you have all these reasons why you shouldn't have to follow your husband's prudential orders. That's what makes it a gift and a sacrifice to Christ. Same thing for men submitting to the church on matters that they really love and care about. But if the Pope has the authority over the liturgy, like the husband has over prudential matters of the home, you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yep, exactly. That you made the point that I was trying to make perfectly. Thank you. The fourth girly feminist reason, it's just the rhetoric of unsubmission reason that they give for shutting down the dialogue, even though they said they're going to enter in the dialogue 2 paragraphs above, was they say the criteria for being a faithful Catholic are not subject to dialogue, but to authoritative teaching. Mueller laid them out in, who was CDF in 2017. I might read those at the end. Therefore, joint discernment is impossible. And it's like, dude, are you retarded? They weren't inviting you to do dialogue on the nature of what the criteria for being a faithful Catholic are. They were inviting you to joint dialogue to see if anything could be knocked loose that's not a principle that could be conceded either by Rome or Icone, either by the Holy See or by the society. And a lot of times this happens. You know, you want to check in and do dialogue every couple of years or so, even if you're in a deadlock, even if you're in a stalemate. I know this from past family of origin issues where we get deadlocked and it's like, well, okay, let's check in every 2 years and see if we can concede anything. That's the main reason you bother to check in. This guy, Father David Pagliarani, misunderstands. He's like, well, the criteria for being a faithful Catholic have been laid out by the church since really 1965, since the end of the council. And they've been reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And then you had all these CDFs in that time, especially CDF Mueller, Cardinal Mueller, Gerhard, saying, here are the criteria. I'll read them in 2017, what they were. Therefore, there's no point in getting together. It's like, that's not the purpose of dialogue. The purpose of dialogue is to get together and see if there's anything that either party feels it can concede about. Finally, fifthly, feminist rhetoric of unsubmission, reason number 5, that the SSPX just on February the 18th turned down Rome for a religious dialogue in the upcoming 5 months before they create a new act of schism, is that, quote, we SSPX can't ignore the historical precedents of efforts made in this direction. In other words, for the third time now, Father Pagliarani is repeating the disputed and heavily by him critiqued rationale for not getting together for dialogue 7 years earlier, hinging around the futility of dialogue. He was critiquing it. Now he's incurring, making reference to, alluding to, helping himself to the desiderata of such an argument, the futility argument.
As with the hierarchy of the home, when your superior approaches you and says, okay, let's hear your best case, that is always an honor, and you are in the supplicant position. So it's like, I'm not getting from his letter that he understands that he's the supplicant. Like
the petitioner.
You are the petitioner. And you're the one that is being called to make your best case, despite all the hurts and grievances and, like, you know, whatever it is. It does strike me of like this is femme energy, like women getting mad at their husbands and like giving them a silent treatment. The husband doesn't notice for a while. Finally tries to ask her, like, hey, do you want to eat dinner tonight? It's like, oh, now you're talking to me. Now you care about asking me my opinion about something. And then he's just like, do you want to go to dinner or not?
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a shit about your tantrum. Would you like to go to dinner tonight? Like,
do you want to have theological dialogue about Vatican II? You just, in this same letter, bro, dog, you said, oh, thank goodness, after 7 years, finally you guys come around to seeing the desiderata of a theological dialogue. And you're like, okay, cool. So, you know, it's probably Tuccio, the, you know, dirty little pervert, is reading this letter and is like, okay, I guess we're going to do dialogue sometime in late Feb, early March. And then he gets to paragraph 3 and he's like, this dude's schizo. And this mark of schizo it's like the thing I don't like about these SSPX people. It's the spurgy, autistic nature of that. They flip into Gollum mode.
It's a spirit of disobedience. Like, that's what it is. And that's where I think the critique for the SSPX is. It's a spirit of schism, a spirit of disobedience. Again, once your superior and your authority comes to you and says, I'd like to hear what you have to say, that's a rare honor. And you jump at the opportunity. It is not the time then to be like, oh, well, I'm still upset because of what you said to me last week. And I'll let you know if I'm going to meet you at the Vatican. It's like, guys.
Hierarchy is a part of life.
Hierarchy is a part of life. And where you are on the hierarchical strata is like, you're bound by like decorum, by your status.
So he closes by citing Cardinal Mueller's June of 2017 minimum requirements for full communion with the Catholic Church. And again, like Steph's saying, like a bitchy feminist wife, It's like, well, why would I talk to you at all? If you already know, you're the authority, like a wife petitioning her husband, you already know what your requirements are to call me a good wife, which is literally part of the purview, one of the privileges of authority. They get to set what the criteria are for you to be a good subordinate. And they're like, well, I'm not going to dialogue, even though I requested dialogue with you about this. And then you're like, okay, cool, let's go do it. And they're like, well, I'm not going to because you're the one setting the parameters. It is absolutely bizarre.
You're like, oh, of course I'm the one setting the parameters because I'm Rome. Like,
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
I'm Rome. This is what do you think, Rome? Are you really? People always say, I think Honey Badger said this on Twitter the other day. Oh, they're just Luther. They're modern day Luther. I'm like, I don't love that. I think what they are is modern day Constantinople. I think these people are really just confused. These SSPX types are confused Eastern Orthodox. They know they don't want to be Eastern Orthodox, but they're like that. And people know I have a lot of love for my Ortho bros too. So I don't dislike SSPX. I was sort of defending them against some of Joe Enders's claims when he was out here. So it's like I make fun of them sometimes. I defend them against others. Same thing with the Ortho bros. They have cognitive dissonance. They really have the view of Rome that it's the first among equals, and Rome doesn't really have the authority to do anything, to get rid of the mass. I mean, you're not going to catch me out because I'm Mr. Consistent with this. I really dislike the Novus Ordo, but I debated on the Mass of the Ages channel against Timothy Flanders that, like, it sucks. It's shitty. I did not like Pope Francis. Horrible guy. Horrible man. But that was one of his authorities, was to mess with the discipline of the church and to do Traditionis Custodes. Well, he's thumbing us in the eye. Yeah, he was. That's one of his plenary powers. Now, Amoris Laetitia, I don't think he had the authority to do. That's a doctrinal thing. And it's literally like a nullity when he tries to say 2 and 2 is 5. To say, look, we're just going to make it really even more difficult to find a Latin Mass, which directly affected me and my family. It sucks. But he had that authority. Now,
well, and this is why hell hates Our Lady, right, so much, is because she's perfected the virtue of obedience and humility. And that isn't just a feminine virtue. Women typically live that out day to day more than men do, because of particularly Catholic wives, because we're called to that vocation on a daily basis to submit ourselves to our husbands. But this is part of the virtue of humility is difficult to attain because it requires discomfort and trust and heartache and sacrificing your preferences and things that you love to honor somebody above you. And this is what I'm seeing lacking in some of the SSPX men. It's like, yes, we all acknowledge as traditional Catholics who love the TLM what we love and prefer in the TLM. But if we agree that the Pope, which I don't know why we aren't, that the Pope actually has the authority over the liturgy, then why not do what good Catholic wives do every single day whenever they abide a decision that their husbands give them that they're uncomfortable with, offer it as a sacrifice to God and say, okay, this is a difficult moment in my submission to the church. And through this, I know I'm going to attain this virtue of submission and humility. And I hope Christ sees this discomfiture that I'm in and offers me some sort of, grace upon my last judgment. Like, I don't see any willingness to truly suffer. And this is one of the things that brought me as a Catholic convert into the faith was that Our Lady's suffering, Christ's suffering and his passion are extremely meaningful to me. That to me, when I have anything happen in my life, I always recur to the suffering that the saints go through, Christ goes through, Our Lady goes through. And I'm just like, guys, I love the liturgy too. But sometimes we ought to suffer to show our love for the thing that we love, that the TLM. Like, yeah, you love the TLM, suffer for it. You have to lose it, suffer for it. If the Pope has this authority, he has this authority. Suffering is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and it helps us to grow in virtue for submission and humility.
Agreed. And you see the same maneuver. I want to move on, but you see the same maneuver by SPX advocates as feminist Catholic wives, where they say, I will submit. I will submit wherever it's clear I need to submit, but I'm not going to submit on prudential judgments by my authority unless I think that prudential judgment is good. Beggaring and dissecting the very nature of what prudential authority is. It's Schrodinger's cat. It's not known until the end of time whether or not your husband's prudential judgment is one that Jesus was like, cool, or that wasn't good. Same thing with Rome, where it's actually Rome's prudential authority. You're beggaring the very nature of what prudential authority is and requires. And that's the same trick where I just don't get it. It's so clear. Yeah, you have to follow your husband in all things except for direct sin. Meaning, unless your husband says contracept or stop being Catholic or murder this dude with me and cut up the body, something that directly, non-interpretively violates one of the Decalogue, you have to do what he says. In other words, we're going to 9 o'clock mass, not 10. No, I think prudentially Jesus would want us to go to the 10. So you're just dissecting what the nature of obedience is. Obedience is by its nature deferring to your husband's prudential authority.
Over your
obedience is by its nature deferring to Rome's prudential authority. Yeah, I know you feel really confident. The 10 o'clock mass would be better than 9 o'clock. Wives out there, we're really confident, even me, the TLM is better than the Novus Ordo. But for some mystical reason, we are being asked by heaven to go through this period where we have this pretty shitty liturgy, if I'm being honest. I do not.
It's a suffering.
Evil. It's a suffering, and we submit to it.
Why aren't they seeing that? Like when I see this, the scourge that we're in with the hierarchy and the sex scandals and all this thing, I look at it and I'm like, we're being called to suffer. We are not being called to be comfortable in the TLM. Clearly, we're all losing something we love. All these horrible things are happening. I'm looking at this objectively. I'm like, okay, if Christ wants me to suffer, and there's been times in my life where that's been clearly the case. When our daughter was born really sick, every one of my pregnancies is awful. You know what I mean? It's like Christ is calling me to redemptive suffering. Lay down your arms and accept it, and good things will come, like spiritually, individually for you. It might take hundreds of years for the church to correct itself. I have faith it will, but individually, accept your suffering, accept your cross. You're not allowed to just go out of the bounds of the church and the hierarchy and start making up your own rules to make yourself more comfortable. That's soft. That is not growing in virtue.
100%. So he concludes this letter with a request for sacramental ministry, because remember, during the late Francis pontificate, Francis gave them, as part of the year of mercy, the matrimonial sacramental power back. And people at SSPX then was saying, he's never going to take it back. It's not just going to be part of the year of mercy. He's really regularizing them. That didn't happen. And he says, over the last decade, Pope Francis and yourself have abundantly advocated listening and understanding of non-standard, complex, exceptional, particular situations, which is, of course, true. It's a valid critique. Francis is petitioned on behalf of all brigands and rule breakers around the world, particularly sexual rule breakers and brigands, saying, let's not, let's wish for a use of law that is always pastoral, flexible, reasonable, without pretending to resolve everything through legal automatism and pre-established frameworks. In other words, relativism. Fine critique of what Francis is doing. Don't try to also benefit by that use of the one ring, SSPX. You know it's bad to not be legalistic. Don't say, well, Francis is willing to be relativistic and anti-legalistic for the brigands and the homos and the divorcees and the people outside the church. We want that same extension. No, that's your problem. I get what you're doing rhetorically. You're saying, you guys are saying leniency for thee, but not for me. Well, of course. This is what leftists do. This is what modernists do. They make exceptions. This is what Satan does. He makes exceptions to tempt perverts and licentiates of all sorts into sin, and then isn't going to show the same kind of clemency toward those who actually do have good hearts, like SSPX folks have good hearts. Don't complain about that. You don't want to be the beneficiary of relativism, right? I get what you're saying, though. Okay, 6 days before that, on February the 12th, the Holy See, now we're moving back in time. This is what they were responding to, the SSPX. The Holy See, 6 days before, on February the 12th, had proposed a theological dialogue to SSPX, which was bizarrely, schizophrenically embraced in the first half of the letter, 6 days later, and then later. And then in the second half of the letter, they rejected, repudiated. It was a meeting between Tuccio and Father Davide Pagliarani, who responded to that letter on the 18th. He's, of course, the Secretary General of SSPX. And the meeting was held with Pope Leo's approval. 3 days prior to this February 12th meeting between those two, Tuccio had spoken with Leo, and probably Leo said, yeah, on the 12th, you can go meet with Father Pagliarani. The process, a well-established methodology, would have established the minimum requirements for a full communion of SSPX so that they will be able to identify a real, point-outable, cognizable canonical status again. They always say, "Oh, we're not out of communion with Rome." Okay, what's your canonical status? You can't point at one. I want them to have one, by the way. I don't know if I could say the same for all of my young friends that just say, "Look, the SSPX
fully licit, like they're acknowledged."
Yeah. I want them to be, but I don't know if they want to be. And then I talked to most people like my friend Joe Enders. I'm not sure if he wants them to be. They're disobedient. Get them out. That's not my view. I do agree. If you're going to be lenient with homos and divorcees and perverts, come on, just why can't we get SSPX back? But I don't think SSPX wants to be back. Though it was a cordial and sincere meeting as described by the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, I guess that means by Tuccio, this February 12th meeting, which had preempted the February 18th bizarre head-scratching rejection of the offer to dialogue. After clarifying several points raised by SSPX that had come up between 2017 and 2019, in epistolary form and letter form, Tuccio proposed a path of theological dialogue. That's what had happened on the 12th. You just heard it responded to. That's what I opened with. Especially on the most doctrinal point of this mostly pastoral council, that the closest thing to a doctrine at Vatican II, that is, was God's will in regard to religious pluralism. The distinctions that Tuccio suggested, this would have been interesting to see this dialogue, and I would have been, again, kind of rooting for SSPX to push the church to sound more orthodox. This is, again, why I'm frustrated at SSPX, because I agree. We need to hear what's the official 1965, post-1965 Catholic position on religious pluralism, religious liberty. I'm closer to SSPX's view of this than Tuccio's.
And that would have been a time for them to give not only the case to Rome, but for everyone, their adherents, people like us. It's like, okay, you have our attention. Rome, you have Rome's attention, you have my attention. Let's hear it. What is your best case? Like, I want to hear what you have. And
I know what they have.
Because, I mean, in a formal sense, yeah. Because
religious pluralism is, it comes out okay, but it's vexing and it's problematic the way it's phrased in Dignitatis Humanae. It's very close to problematic. Thomas Pink has Pinker, whatever his name is, has, I think, threaded the needle, but you shouldn't have to read a 78-page white paper to thread the needle. And I did it and lectured on it at Franciscan University one summer to nuns for Dr. Mike Cirilla, my friend. But I'm like, man, this is like the only way that religious liberty works out in Dignitatis Humanae. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't require a 78-page paper by an Oxford genius. It should be clear. And Rome could actually clarify there. And sometimes clarification actually is centrification. And this would be one of those good instances. So I was rooting for it. the well-established methodology. But also Tuccio admitted that distinctions, if they have this meeting, would be made, would include religious submission of intellect and will. That is the difference between an act of faith and an act of faith and an obedience of faith. Act of faith is religious submission of intellect. Very important definition to make in the post-Vatican II world, where the church is often wrong, but not in dogmatic definitions ever. And the distinction between that religious submission of intellect and the religious submission of will, which is an obedience of faith, different from an act of faith. This is super important to me because I'm saying don't be autistic, right? That locus of, I think, acting like a non-autistic guy, mocking something but obeying. Okay, fine, this is gay, but I'm going to do it, is entirely circumscribed by that penumbra, by that shadow of difference between religious submission of intellect, the act of faith, and the religious submission of will, the obedience of faith. That's very important to a cat like me, maybe more to me than to SSPX types. And it also, Tuccio says, would have adumbrated, laid out, defined, identified varying degrees of assent that would be owed to different texts of Vatican II. That sounds super interesting. Why did you guys reject this?
That would have been great for all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they probably would have said some gay stuff, but I would have liked to have at least seen what they had.
Yeah.
What does Tuccio have on that? I'd love to have had that. They basically robbed us all of the opportunity to hear what the Vatican has to say about that.
Yeah,
like it's
they screwed the pooch.
I mean, why did they? And it's just the spirit of disobedience, honestly. And it's like, well, if you're already telling me prior to the meeting that you don't mostly agree with me, then it's not worth having a meeting. It's like, that's the point of a meeting.
Yeah.
In the off chance that things go well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Which is the girl thing. And this is the sassy wife thing. And it's frustrating precisely because I wanted to hear this stuff. I wanted to hear it play out. I'm more on these conceptual issues, conceptually, maybe not procedurally, much more. I'm much closer to SSPX.
Because even if they hadn't got
not procedurally,
even if they weren't getting what they wanted, that alone right there, what even discussing that would have been a gift to the faithful, just to hear that. Even if you're like a SSPX person and you didn't get the ball all the way into the end zone on everything you wanted, I mean, that would have at least been something that would have been an interesting tidbit for the faithful. You know, it's and this is how often it is. Like, you have to start engaging in these meetings, and it's probably going to take a lot of them. It's not going to be just a one and done situation.
Right. Precisely. Tuccio also suggested a series of topics listed in a January 2019 letter, part of the dialogue between Mueller and Archbishop Lefebvre, I believe. Actually, maybe this just reminded me, instead of going through all of the Mueller 2017 letter, now I'll do that because it's just taking too long to be detailed. I'll do that for the locals when we meet afterwards. That'll be locals exclusive content. That's what we'll do. Is
look for that
Mueller
link
letter
after the live stream. If you're a monthly supporter on YouTube, subscribe to or locals. I'll post that link for the live after that. And we do have some super chats, so I don't know if you want to.
I want to get through this.
Okay.
The Holy See reiterated on this February 12th meeting, 6 days before the response by SSPX. The Holy See reiterated the proposed ordination of bishops without a pontifical mandate. You need the pontifical mandate. It's got the supreme, full, universal, immediate, direct, ordinary power directly out of Pastor Aeternus. Supreme, full, universal, immediate, direct, ordinary power. It reiterated that this mandate, being ignored by SSPX on July 1st, 2026, by ordaining more bishops, just like 1988, Dr. Taylor Marshall, would entail, quote, a decisive rupture of ecclesial communion. That is to say, a schism. There's no nice word for it, gang. With grave consequences for the society as a whole, end quote. And what did Tuccio propose? He hasn't proposed much that's not too fruity and gay, but here's something good. He proposed suspending these July 1st Episcopal ordinations because they're nothing but trouble for everybody. The Superior General of the Society, Father Pagliarani, will present this proposal to the council and provide a response to the dicastery, which we opened with that 6 days later. That's how the letter ends. This response comes 6 days later, and it's very disappointing that they begged for the theological dialogue for 7 long years. Now we're happy to get it, but we're not going to do it. Insane Smeagol golem, self-contradiction, cognitive dissonance, schizophrenia. The mark of schism in the world is schizophrenia.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this fact, but they're guilty of what they accuse the Vatican of like making up their mind insofar as consecrating the bishops. It's like, no, we're just going to go ahead with this.
No, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, it's like, well,
nature of my critique.
This is what, like, you don't have authority outside of Rome. Like, you're going to this meeting to discuss these matters. And you're also saying, like Rome is saying to you, like, no, we're just going to do whatever the hell we want to, regardless of what happens in this meeting. It's like, okay, well, you're doing exactly what you're saying Rome is doing.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense.
Yeah, this is what I kept saying. I was like, this is precisely it's all futile. Why have theological dialogue? Rationale for shutting down theological dialogue. Complaint that they'd leveled in the first part of the same letter, the February 18th letter to Rome. It's nutty. On February the 4th, now we're moving back, 8 days before the February 12th meeting, 5 days before the February 9th meeting that Tuccio had with the Pope enabling the February 12th meeting. Now we're on February the 4th. The director of the Holy See press office, Matteo Bruni, another, rainbow homo, expresses the Holy See's desire for effective means of dialogue for positive results, probably pretextual, but you want to ride that wave if you're SSPX to try to be efficacious in your own interest. And 2 days before, on February the 2nd, what probably fetched this entire chain of events, the Society had announced in a communique the July 1st ordinations. And that's, you're only responding, the girl thing. You're only responding to us because on February 2nd, we threatened to do ordination. Okay. Yeah. Well, Rome's only responding because they don't want you to do this. It's harmful to you and others. And yes, that doesn't mean that because Rome has your better interest in mind here, that they have your good interest in mind across the boards. That doesn't follow. I know they're bad guys, but they're right to say, don't do this.
And that, I think that is like a spirit of charity, just to stick up for Rome for a little bit. They okay, fine, we heard you. You're going to do this. We heard the threat. Like, this is happening imminently. Like, all right, let's have this meeting. Like, that does show some care for the souls of the SSPX. If the position from obviously Rome is that you're going to be stepping outside the bounds of the hierarchy in the church to do this thing, we do care, and we need to have this meeting.
As it shows charity on Rome's part, I don't stick up for Rome that often, but it shows charity on Rome's part that, and Taylor Marshall is the one that told me this. I had no clue before he showed it to me. You don't catch me nashing too often, but he was like, dude, the Ecclesia Dei Commission, it's Monsignor Care gave permission on 3 separate occasions for Catholic faithful to attend SSPX chapels in non-emergency situations, as long as they don't formally adhere to a schismatic spirit. And that's like 99% of the lay people I've ever known that regularly go to SSPX chapels. But ironically, the funny thing is, someone like me, or someone that probably is more antipathetic to SSPX, like my friend Joe Enders, or someone like Pine Sap, or one of these young groypers that really hates SSPX, we're among the only number, or you staff, we're among the number of people that could probably actually licitly and undangerously set foot on Sundays in SSPX chapels and attend mass there. Because I know they're different. It's kind of an autistic crowd. They probably don't love me. I just share with them a love for the preconciliar church, the preconciliar mass. That's a lot. And I could go there and I wouldn't start turning into a little schismatic woman the way they have this womanish schismatic spirit. But I'm one of the ones that I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, I don't want to go to an SSPX chapel, even though we're allowed to. The point, nevertheless, that I was trying to recall here is that Rome has, in many ways, since 1988, been charitable. And they were charitable to remove the excommunications. And they were charitable to speak as if this is not a complete act of schism, even though they need to be clear whether it is or it isn't. Even Francis himself was not clear about all that. I will say that one of the fathers of the church, cardinals of the church that a lot of us look up to, Cardinal Sarah, has criticized the SSPX's plan to consecrate new bishops. He wrote of his deep concern and sadness. He says to leave Peter's boat and to organize ourselves autonomously and in a closed circle is to surrender ourselves to the waves of the storm.
He's right.
Definitely right.
He's just right. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like every time I hear from somebody who's SSPX, and again, we know lots of these people and love them, but it's like, or from their bishops, it's always a spirit of schism. Like I'm not seeing from them a willingness to work with Rome. I'm always hearing like horrible things about Rome. It's like, yeah, we get it, but like, why are you petitioning Rome for acknowledgement if you don't need Rome's acknowledgement?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand what we're even doing here. If you can just go about your business doing whatever the hell you want to, then be about your day.
Yeah.
And stop petitioning Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop asking the Holy Father to like for acknowledgement.
If you don't need Rome to sanction what your activities are, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, Society of St. Pius X, then you're just like the Setes, right? But if you acknowledge that you need to get back in to the ranks of the faithful, so to speak, I don't know any other way to put it, then submit. Make up your mind. SSPX is philosophically incoherent. Setevacantists, on the other hand, I don't think they're right, but they are philosophically coherent in a way SSPX never can be, because Setevacantists say, look, we're the remnant church. I don't think they're right. Philosophically coherent just means there aren't contradictions in their premises. They're not right, I don't believe. I'm 99.5% sure that Setes aren't right. But they're self-consistent. They're like, we don't need the church. The popes aren't the popes since Pius XII. There are actually doctrinal flaws in the documents, and therefore the church ran aground into this subjunctive reality, and it's no longer the church, and we're the only true church. And they ordain, Pope Michael and Pope Bob and Pope,
Cooper,
Ted.
or whatever.
Yeah. So they're philosophically coherent in a way that SSPX can never be. SSPX has the schismatic spirit of Setevacantists, and this is why Setevacantists always mock them. But they're like, we can do whatever we want. But can you please let us do whatever we want? It's completely
Can you please talk to us? We want to do whatever we want. And Rome's like, well, we don't know about that. And they're like, well, we're just going to do whatever we want.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to talk or not?
Yeah.
Like this is like guys across the country with their wives when they're upset about something. Like, do you want to have a conversation, or do you want to just sit there giving me the silent treatment? Which one is it?
If not,
make up your damn mind.
It's
either sit
really
there in silence and like we'll just do the rest of this drive quietly, or out with it already. Like this is, I don't get it. I don't know how people who are in the SSPX crowd aren't seeing that that's what that letter was, where he's basically like, yeah, we want dialogue, but we're mad at you for not wanting dialogue with us, so we're going to give you the silent treatment.
Yeah, strange.
It's like, ugh. Okay, super chats.
Yeah, let's run through them. Man, I'm just... Yeah, okay.
Tim, for added V2 discussion, what's a good source for the Ottaviani intervention? Did I say that right? Ottaviani? Yeah.
Let's see. You can do The Rhine Flows into the Tiber. That's a fun book. I I mean, I would just poke around on the internet. I was doing a lot of this research a few years ago when I was thinking about writing the Vatican II book. But Rhine flows into the Tiber. We'll give you a lot of the backstory, Shadow Council, Ottaviani. What was Ottaviani doing? Why is Ottaviani not this schismatic guy like, like Archbishop Lefebvre? So yeah, Rhine flows into the Tiber, and then just internet research. A lot of times people will ask, "Oh, what should I read about this?" Just poke around for ask ChatGPT, what's the best book to read on this? It'll give you 3 or 5.
Lauren said the modern conciliar hierarchy doesn't care about consecrations without permission. Parallel juridical structures or schism. What they can't stand is traditional Catholic doctrine and morality. And then it's Catholic. I think that's a Catholic Esquire quote.
All right. Could you read
the
that
modern
again?
conciliar hierarchy doesn't care about consecrations without permission, parallel juridical structures, or schism. What they can't stand is traditional Catholic doctrine and morality.
But see, this is just that kind of girl thinking. I mean, I like Catholic Esquire, but like, this is girl math. This is home math. You're better than this. What the whole modern hierarchy, how many guys is that? A few thousand? What they really care about. Don't psychologize. I don't know what they really care about. Just ask what a constitution requires. What are they bound by? What did like 3,000 guys in the hierarchy really care about? I don't know, and I don't know what your basis for knowing would be.
This is what you were saying about a monarchy, right? When you were even talking about this with a monarchy, like the good and the bad of the monarchy. It's like, this is that.
That's a part of it. If you want a monarchy, you're going to take the bad with the good, because monarchies are usually bad, not good. That's what Thomas Aquinas says. When they're good, they're at their best. But no, my point here is they're saying Rome is just pretending to care about schismatic, episcopal ordinations, schism itself, procedure. They're just pretending to care about this. What they really want to do is harangue, persecute, stymie the faithful, the faithful that love the old mat, the Vitus Ordo, and the real church, the pre-conciliar church. I mean, yeah, but also no. Like, they are within their, maybe that's what, you guys are so confused out there. You're so befuddled by the intentionalist, textualist dichotomy. Yes, maybe they have bad intentions and they're exploiting them, and they're exploiting their technical authority, but they still retain the technical authority to manage and to implement that exploitation. You see? And to psychologize and say, oh, they don't really care. Well, I mean, who is they? 3,000 people? We really know what the psychology of 3,000 people. I agree that the power in Rome is anti-traditionalist. Is that all you're saying? Because if so, I agree. That's not as interesting as the way it was framed, though. You're saying every one of the people. We're not really schismatic because they don't really care if we're schismatic. They mainly just want to shut down the Latin Mass. Well, no, you can't make that claim. So, like, yes and no. It's just home math.
Username just gave $5. Thank you so much. Dylan Runner said the SSPX is for tweed-suited weirdos.
Generally, yes. But tweed-suited weirdos who have a similar view of the world to us, just not a similar view of deodorant, weightlifting, sports, trying to look good, trying to be kind of normal without being a normie, trying to be normal. They disagree on those things typically, and they're kind of, they're autists, they're spurgs, but they're people that if you asked them about gays outside the church, they'd give an answer, they'd call them, well, whatever, something we would call them. They ask about gays inside the church, they'd be like, yeah, the bishops are mostly gay dudes, which is my view. They give basically the same answers. These are just people that don't know how to live in society generally.
There are guys that you can talk to at a party for an hour, but these aren't guys that you're inviting over to your house for like a swim party, like a barbecue.
Yeah, largely because they would be talking about swim parties are sinful. they'd be like, they don't really understand how humanity works, which is the main mark of an autist. They're like, would you wear just a pair of swimming trunks to mass? No. Well, then why is it okay to do at this swim party? Well, because it's a different context, dumb fuck. You know, that's what you want to say to them. But they're nice guys. They're just retarded socially, and it has profound effects.
Gilmore says, what brings you to the conclusion that the new mass will be gone in 100 years? Also, where can I watch the video with you and Carrie Pregine Bowler? What news station was that on?
Sorry, that'll be on Monday. I'm doing 2 interviews with her on Monday on RT News. And one's like a Twitter thing and one's on their main. It got kicked. It's a strong intuition. The strong intuition is based on the fact that the church always gets stuff right in the long term, even disciplinary stuff where there is no right answer. There's just a good feel. The church will always get the good feel. But we're having to sit through a really crappy Novus Ordo mass. It's just a joke. It's a joke, right? The clown mass, the clowns who do the masses, the clowns who write the stuff, the goofy ass overweight women who populate the parishes.
They always like read the readings like, and now we're going to be reading the Gospel of Mark.
The Gospel
you know what I mean? They
of
always
Jesus.
Yeah.
The Gospel of Jesus. In today's reading, and they do this and shit. Like
we get it.
They're objectionable people, and it's an objectionable time. SSPX folks, adjacents, faithful Novus Ordites, just say it with me. We live in an objectionable time inside the church. I mean, it's always an objectionable time outside the church. The popular culture never can help itself. It's always just, a voice crying out in the wilderness. But inside the church, it's an objectionable time. Suffer a little bit, like a man. Yeah. Everything's not this, well, I don't like my husband's prudential decision, so I'm going to claim it's an emergency authority I declare unto myself, the bitchy-ass wife. That's all SSPX does. Just suffer. Be a good woman. We're the bride of Christ. Just be like, my husband's kind of a goof, Maybe my husband's even a bit of a perv. If we're really talking about the church, the churchmen who are in charge of the church, they're goofy pervs, modernists. But we're just like, Jesus knew this would happen. Mary knew this would happen. So we could kind of laugh. We can get mad at times. But and we can, sure as shit, we can say the Vetus Ordo is better than the Novus Ordo.
Well, even on a lesser degree.
What we can't do is say, therefore, we're not going to follow him.
Well, even Jesus even knew, like initially, even with Peter, on a much lesser scale, that he would betray him and all this stuff. So, I mean, obviously, he knew he was putting guys in charge that weren't going to be as good as him, so to speak.
Why, if you wanted the best of the apostles, this is great. I'm so glad you said this. Why not John? Why was John not the first pope? Why was John not the first pope? Peter was a goofball. I mean, St. Peter, be with me now. He's a saint now up in heaven, but Peter was not the best of the apostles. Who was the most faithful one? Who showed up, who had the stones to show up at the crucifixion? John.
That he entrusted his mother to.
Who did he entrust his mother to? John, not Peter. Who was called the beloved apostle? John, not Peter. Who did Jesus choose to lead the church? Peter. It's part of the mystery of iniquity.
I just don't think it's that much of a mystery. I think it's just Christ is like, yeah, these are, men, that are going to be running the church, and they're going to be flawed, and we'll be suffering along with them as they make missteps or they do things within their purview that we don't like.
I think it's a mystery though. Why? Because John's still flawed. John wasn't Jesus himself.
Of course. Yeah.
But you could, if the model would have been John, then you'd be like, he's the best of the apostles. Of the best of the 12. Who's arguably the best of the apostles if you count Johnny come lately? Paul. Maybe Paul. Was he ever a pope? No, it was Peter. Peter was a goof. Now, I'm not saying Francis or Leo or any of the really bad popes are merely goofs. Peter had a heart of fiery love for Christ.
We made so many mistakes.
I don't think Francis did. Yeah, he was a mistaken, lovable guy. I don't think Francis was a lovable guy. I think he was an evil dude. I think he was a hateful dude. He called us shit eaters, I mean, Francis hated white people. He hated North Americanos. This is a well-known thing. I don't love Francis, right? But I did my best to say, hey, look, he's a bad dude. This is a stumbling block. If I had to bet my life savings, stumbling block or not stumbling block? Probably a stumbling block. I'm not too worried about that bet either. I'm going to make money on that bet. But I tried to credit where it's due. Traditionis Custodes, he had the authority to thumb us in the eye. The rest of the time he's thumbing us in the eye, he might not have had the authority. Doctrinally, he has less authority, but disciplinarily, come on now, get real.
Rosarium said, I'm fortunate enough to have 2 TLM parishes relatively close to me, but I'd be in favor of more Eastern Catholic parishes. What's your take on the EC?
It's a LARP. It's a LARP. It's not, no, I'm a Western supremacist guy. I'm so sick of hearing about the Eastern. It's Miyagi complex, you know? It's like next thing you know, you're going to be Daniel LaRusso decorating his whole house in like Oriental shit. Bonsai trees and like you have your dojo and headband. Yeah, take off your shoes when you come in. Don't dishonor family. You know, I know that you're still Christian, you're still technically Catholic, but if you're not from one of those regions, don't be a LARP. It's Roman, and it's also like 98% of the rites. We just have to get rid of the Novus Ordo. I'm a Roman supremacist. We are Roman Catholics, okay? The Eastern rites are for dorks. The Eastern rites are a different kind of cognitive dissonance. Well, who was it? It was like, I'm not saying these are dorks. I'm just saying these are for the guys that go too far in their critiques of SSPX, that go too far in their...
It's like Gabe Lewis on the
encomiums of praise for encomiums of praise for Francis was like Trent Horn, Matt Frad, White Chocolate Lofton. You know, he did big White Chocolate Bar Lofton. They were all Eastern Rite, and they're like, you got to. Hey, there's nothing wrong with the Novus Ordo. No, there's a lot wrong with it. You know, it's fruity. But then they're all Eastern Rite, like you said, Gabe Lewis on The Office. Like, you know,
you get all the white guys into the Eastern stuff, and then they start like, you know, like listening to Asian stuff, and like it's just like, boy.
Yeah. These are guys saying they have a crush on Arisha Rue. Yeah, come on. Asian shit ain't right. You know that. If you're a white person, you know the West is the best. If you're an NBA fan, you know the West is the best. Not the East is the least, West is the best, as we say in the NBA. The Leastern Conference versus the Bestern Conference. The Eastern Hemisphere is the Leastern Hemisphere. We don't need Eastern rites. What we need is to get rid of, or we can't get rid of it. What we need is to be ridden of this goofy bi-ritualism, and not by getting rid of the TLM, by getting rid of this Novus Ordo. And there's nothing we can do. We just have to wait and pray and submit. When everyone who loves the Latin Mass submits, you know, and either goes to a diocesan TLM or just waits it out, then I'll bet you that's when God says, okay, you guys have had enough suffering.
I think there's a lot of like well-meaning, like ignorant Catholics at the Novus Ordo. I would love to see some of these SSPX people like infiltrate the Novus Ordo parishes and petition their priests and to bring some of that tradition into the established parishes. I think that would help the faithful that are ignorant in those areas. But I think that's a good way of doing things. Yeah, you'll suffer because you have to go through the Novus Ordo and you're not getting your preferred mass. But again, we're talking about, I'm seeing all these SSPX people in chat, like, what about the saving of souls? It's like, you know, you can also help with that by going to mass.
I'm so sick of the grandiloquence. What about the saving of souls? The soul, your soul is not saved based on what it's. You work out your own salvation with holy fear and trembling, man. You work it out by going to confession and communion. I know that the equipoise, I know that the manifestation, that the public-facing posture of confession and communion is different at the Novus Ordo. It's not as good. It's not as sanctified. It's not as sacralizing. But you can work it out there. And a lot of really good people are working out their own sanctification at the Novus Ordo. So don't start with this. That's where you get into it's an emergency. It's not an emergency. It's a tacky mass. That's all it is. And I hate it. I hate it because when I say something's tacky, I mean, I loathe this. See, the thing about me that you might not realize, because I don't know why, I have this aesthetic streak, right? If something's tacky looking, I loathe it. That's the main thing. Oh, well, I loathe the Novus Ordo because I'm holier than you, Tim, because it's disrespectful to Jesus. Well, that's part of it, but that's part of what makes it tacky. It's a gut level thing, man. You got to get in the world. You got to learn. A lot of this is intuitive. A lot of this is a smell test. It's not that Jesus is like being crucified again or something like that. It's not that dramatic.
It's so funny.
Things don't need to be that dramatic in order. You don't have to overstate your claim to have a compelling claim.
It's funny to me. We have a subscriber who's super mad at you. He's not going to be subscribed for long, and he wants you to know that. And this is the funny thing. It's like, guys, take your ball and go home. If you don't like what Tim says, unsubscribe. And take your ball and go home.
This is what I've said for 7 long years. I'll say it in 7 more years. A lot of the people say, "Oh, ta-ta, I'm out of here," and I'm like, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Like, enjoy, and with my best wishes. But they say that, and then they stick around, and then they're gonna. And I don't even like talking about SSPX or ritual stuff or Novus Ordo, Vitus Ordo, because it gets boring. It's not my whole life. But I'll do another show in 3 years, and this guy will be like, I'm gonna leave. It'll be the same guy bitching and carping about, oh, I didn't know you thought that. Okay, just remember, either leave or don't bitch next time I do a show on this.
Also, it's like, why do you think we're doing this? We're not doing this because to make people happy. We're doing this because we're actually trying, or Tim, I'll speak for Tim, not for myself. Like, it's to advance God's kingdom. If that makes you mad, Tim's opinion, then feel free to find a channel that more aligns with your ideological preferences.
Right. That doesn't ever challenge you.
It's like
right? Find a channel where it's your own little echo chamber where you can talk to other autists and spurgs. Whereas I mostly actually agree with you, autists and spurgs, but I'm gonna be the guy that come on. This is good. Back to high school. I'm the guy stuffing you in your locker a little bit every once in a while, giving you a noogie, the occasional swirly. You guys were getting beaten up in high school, and I have to call bullshit on this. Anyone who reads that February 18th letter from the society has to be like, look, I do wish you guys the best. I like you. I agree. Rome is run by a lot of homos, not exclusively, but mainly. Post-conciliar era is fruity. A lot of homos. I don't like it. The new mass makes me mad. It puts me in a bad mood. We're in alignment there. But you guys that say there's an emergency jurisdiction and all that, you are dorks. You're dorks, spurgs, autists. And I'm just being real with you now, and I'm challenging you. I'm saying, to be manly, sometimes there's a very fine line between, like, I'm not going to take shit. I'm not going to take shit. If you go into the army, I'm not going to let my commanding officer beat me up. Yeah, it's kind of womanly to take too much, but it's also womanly to take too little. Then you're going to just put a target on your back, right? If you're in the army and you go in as a grunt, there's a certain amount to take. And the problem with autists and spurgs is they don't know how much shit is the right amount of shit to take. In a hierarchy, when you admit you're in a hierarchy, it's a tough question, and these are intuitive things.
And you're not going to be this is the thing, like, Tim's not going to be a captive creator. There has been no situation I've ever seen him present a show topic where he's like, oh, people are going to be mad at this. We knew people are going to be mad at this show.
Oh, I don't care.
We don't care. Like, if you don't want to support the channel anymore and you're a subscriber, that's perfectly fine. Thank you for being with us as long as you were. But this is how we run things over here, just so other people who are new to the channel are aware. Well, Tim will say whatever the hell he wants to say and what he believes. And if you don't like that and you're that sensitive, then this isn't the channel for you.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Yeah. This is also why, because I'm so consistent, you're not going to catch me out. You're not going to catch me out. The only, like, posture shift I've had in going on 8 years of doing 3 times daily YouTube shows is getting JQ pilled sometime between 20 and 21 during COVID. And I've heard some clips of me saying some cringe things. I might have even said Judeo-Christian in 2018, 2019. I wasn't white knighting, but I was just, before you know, you don't know.
Right.
And that's really the only shift I've had on any of this in 7.5 years. This summer it'll be 8 years when I started making 3 times weekly pods with Taylor. And, the first year was on his channel, but that will be 8 years of 3 times a week, 52 weeks a year. There's a lot of me talking out there, and you can't catch me out on anything. And the one thing where I've shifted, I told you, hey, I've learned, I've grown on the JQ. And that was 5 years ago now or so.
It's funny because you don't even know, like without me like telling you every now and again, and you don't even ask how many subscribers you have.
Don't care.
How many locals people you have. How many subscribers you've lost.
Don't care.
How many locals you've lost. You do not know these numbers. Most Catholic content creators, I know because we know them, are in those numbers all
daily,
the time. I'm telling you, I promise you, Tim does not give a F.
I don't give a fuck. That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, it could be problematic if I started hemorrhaging people, and then I would probably start to care. But it's never been I've never hemorrhaged viewers. I've always grown slowly. I've always grown organically. When I was with Taylor, he was freaked out if he lost one. He's like, we have to not say that. I'm like, I want to say what I believe, man. And that's why I'm really consistent. I've had the view I've had about feminism since 2018, 2019, before it was popular. Now I worked hard, sweat, hustle, grind, popularized it. Now everyone's like, whoa, you're the godfather. I'm like, okay, you can't be godfather if you're one of these straw poll guys. If you run the presidency the way Bill Clinton did, checking the numbers, licking your finger, sticking it into the wind. I know that's how you get to be enormous, right? Taylor Marshall sized, Matt Fradd sized. But those guys are not actually influencing anything decisive, okay? They're providing a service, a professional looking podcast where they can tell people what they kind of want to hear, where they figure out what their crowd is. Marshall's crowd's different from Fradd's, is different from Trent Horn's, but they kind of know what their crowd expects, and they just want to kind of stamp it, tool it up a little bit. It's what you already wanted to hear and spit it back at you. Everyone likes a podcast a little bit for that reason, but that's why so many of my shows are like, okay, this one might make you mad. I don't know. I don't care. You need to be challenged sometimes. You're not growing if you're not challenged. Main idea though, you're not going to catch me out. So let's move on. Well,
speaking of which, we have a local show directly after this.
If any locals are left, no, this is my people. That's why you come here. That's why you come here.
Okay, so we're going to end this live stream. We're going to I'm going to put that link up for the locals. If you have questions about the SSPX topic, I think, Tim, you're going to go over something more in detail on the SSPX question in that exclusive live stream. So we're going to have that up there. Look for that on locals YouTube page and subscribe. Start within the next minute or two. We should have that link up.
All right. Thanks, guys. Peace.